Hey guys, welcome back to another weekly tip. This week we are doing a comparison. We're looking at the difference between CrossFit and HYROX, which are two different sports. And yes, at the gym we are CrossFit gyms. We mostly offer CrossFit classes, but we also have begun to offer some HYROX classes, as HYROX is a sport now that's on the rise. So let's do a little bit of a deep dive into what's the difference between both of these, which one is better, which one's worse.
Sports, what are they? So CrossFit is constantly varied training, and it includes a wide range of Olympic lifting, which are the snatch and clean and jerks, gymnastics, so think of your pull-ups, kipping movements, handstands, all that kind of stuff, body weight. Cardio machines, mainly using the C2, row, ski and bike, and the assault bike is included in that too. And then the constant skill building. There's always something to work on, and technical work, which is a big part of CrossFit, is learning. So learning skills while also applying them into the methodology of constantly varied movement performed at a high intensity. Then we have HYROX. These are kind of on a sliding scale. HYROX has much more simple, accessible movements. What we mean by accessible is that somebody's probably going to learn how to push a sled or run or simply do some lunges quicker than they will ever learn a snatch or a clean and jerk or a muscle up. So sled push and sled pull, wall balls, lunges, farmer carries are the stations of HYROX that are kind of included in the HYROX methodology. Cardio staples like rowing and skiing are also, I would say, almost borrowed a little bit from CrossFit, but still are in the endurance world. And then no complex lifts like gymnastics, it's easier to jump in without years of practice. So HYROX has come about in the last 6 years. CrossFit's been around for about 20 years. It's been mainstream for about, I would say, give or take, about 15 years now, CrossFit. So HYROX is kind of like the new kid on the block that's seeing, okay, people are not really getting these movements as quick. We're going to make it really simple, so you can just sign up for one of our races. Anybody can learn to run, anybody can push a sled type of deal. In a competition setting, now CrossFit is not all competition, but HYROX most certainly is a competition first, and I'm going to explain that now. So workouts will vary by competition. This is up to whoever is running the competition. So if CrossFit decide to put out the CrossFit Open, like they do every year, they can program whatever they want to. There's no set way of doing it. And then when it comes to local competitions or even high level competitions, again, whoever's running it, it's up to them. They can program whatever they want to. The staples of CrossFit are benchmark workouts such as Fran, and then we have hero workouts that are like Murph, and then we have some strength tests, but they vary a lot from power lifts to Olympic lifts as well, and even some gymnastic strength too. The focus is on community in CrossFit. I think that's something that CrossFit will always pride itself on, and something that I'm a big fan of in CrossFit, and probably what drew me to it in the first place is competing with your gym, and a big part of it is cheering each other on. So I used the example of the CrossFit Open already. That's kind of what the CrossFit Open is. If it's not for competing at the CrossFit Games, most of it is for cheering on your fellow competitors and your people in your gym. HYROX never changes. It's one race, and the race always stays the same. I always liken it to the Ironman, where the Ironman triathlon doesn't change. They're not going to change the distance of it to swim. They're not going to change the distance of the bike or the run anytime soon. And it's been working now for years for them, and they travel the world delivering the same race. People compare their times. That's essentially what HYROX is. It's a race against the clock and others in your heat, and anyone can train in a structured way. So straight away we're looking at, okay, CrossFit has more complex movements, but is very, very community based. HYROX does not have complex movements, but is a competition, is a sport primarily. The difference between the two. This comes from WOD Science, who are a phenomenal YouTube channel and Instagram account. Really, really recommend have a look at some of their stuff. Great at breaking down CrossFit and endurance sports for the general public, and just giving you a good understanding of what they are. So duration of the event in a HYROX event, typically between 60 and 90 minutes. I would say sub 60 minutes is elite, and then closer to 90 minutes is beginner. So most people, I do think, fall in somewhere between an hour and 10 minutes in a HYROX event. An hour will be a very good time for a team or an individual. Whereas in CrossFit, we literally don't work out over 20 minutes, which doesn't sound like a long time compared to HYROX, but you have to remember it's more high intense as well. Major focus on HYROX is conditioning. You're always going to go for a longer amount of time. That means your heart rate is naturally going to have to be a little bit lower so you can sustain that for a large amount of time. Whereas CrossFit is a power output sport. CrossFit has elements of endurance, but just because the time frame is shorter than HYROX, we literally cannot be a conditioning sport or an endurance sport. Unless you go to the CrossFit Games or maybe semi-finals level, then you'll see some endurance feats being done, like marathon row was one that has been done at the CrossFit Games a couple of times now. So you're going to see endurance elements, but you're not going to see that in the CrossFit affiliate every day. It's going to be a class workout. It's going to be under 20 minutes. Predictability and HYROX is obviously very high because you know exactly what you're getting every time you go. Like I said, the Ironman is the same thing. CrossFit, it couldn't be lower. It's literally a guessing game sometimes when it comes to competition. You could be doing anything. It's up to whoever's coming up at the events. The level of skill is very low, and CrossFit's obviously very high, with snatches and gymnastics being in CrossFit but not in HYROX. And the type of athlete, which I think is a really interesting thing to understand, the type of athlete in HYROX that we're starting to see, this is completely at elite levels. That's where it's being studied. They're taller athletes. They're over 180 centimeters. They're closer to 6 foot, whereas are over 6 foot too. And some of the CrossFit athletes, just historically, are shorter. Typically, 5'9" and under is a CrossFit athlete. This is, I think, a big range of motion thing. It's obviously easier to do a burpee when you're a bit closer to the floor, or press a bar over your head when your arms aren't as long, and squat deeper when your legs aren't as long. So that's kind of why CrossFit athletes typically are like more average size or smaller. Little bit of a shift is happening at the higher level, I would say. We're starting to see some 6 foot plus athletes in CrossFit now and doing really, really well. So, that changes year to year.
So now that we had a little bit of a breakdown and a look at what the difference between the two is, which one's better? That's completely up to the person who's taken on either event or is training this way every day. Me personally, I'll probably always be a bit more biased towards CrossFit. I think I was drawn to the variation of CrossFit when it comes to the methodology and training, but I've really enjoyed kind of stepping into the world of HYROX as well. I've had a chance to coach some HYROX athletes and now to be programming a lot of HYROX. And, I do think that HYROXers will always benefit from training CrossFit just because of the strength conditioning elements of it. But, HYROX is on the rise. It's only going to keep getting bigger. And I think that this is only the start for HYROX as well. What we've seen in CrossFit in years of late is not as much emphasis gone into the sports side of things and a bit more on the affiliates, which is not a bad thing. But on HYROX, the emphasis is very simple. Let's make the race as cool as possible. Let's make the event as big as possible. And I think people are really drawn to that as well. And I do think the element of knowing what you're getting every time really draws people in. For example, you sign up for a marathon, you're going to run 26.2 miles. You're not going to run any less than that, hopefully. Whereas with CrossFit events, I think people can get a bit turned off not exactly knowing what's going to happen, and there's no predictability to it. So there's probably some things that CrossFit could learn from HYROX in that respect as well. But let me know what you guys think. That's the difference between CrossFit and HYROX.